from Pastor Sean Condren Office Television Network. This is Your Path, live, with Bishop Mark, live from Dallas Universal Life Church in Dallas, Texas.
Well, good evening. Welcome to Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. I'm your host, Bishop Mark Zorn, coming to you live from Dallas, Texas tonight, as we do every Wednesday night at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern Time. Welcome to the show. We are a call-in show. We are here for you. It's called Your Path for a reason. We're here to pray for you, pray with you, to talk with you, discuss things with you, your Christianity, your faith, your life, whatever you need to talk about, that's what we're here for. You'll see a link come across. You won't be across the bottom of your screen, but if you look in the chat, you'll see a link there, and you can dial in through that link, and you can go on live with us, okay? Hopefully it'll pop up there. I'm not sure I put it up there or not, but we'll figure that out. That link will be coming up real soon. So, again, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. We talk about you and talk about things you want to talk about and things going on in your life. But until that happens, until you give us a call in, we have some other things to talk about. And today, I think we've got a good one. I think we're going to talk about some interesting stuff that should intrigue some people, hopefully. So, let's get right to it. How do you answer your friends or colleagues when they ask you why you believe? What do you say when they throw up one of the main excuses for not believing? If you've been here any time, you notice that we do try to answer those questions often here. What we've been doing to answer those questions is the questions people ask us as they were in the congregation. We want to equip you to answer them yourself when someone asks you. It might also be helpful for you to answer questions that you yourself ask from time to time. So if someone doesn't suggest that all religions are the same, or that suffering in the world just proves God, if they don't complain that the injustices inflicted by the church are enough to put them off God, you can be fairly sure that they will think that science has disproved Christianity. And there's that link. Came up for you right there. Richard Dawkins claims that evolutionary science has shown that God's role in creation is just a myth, that the advances of science have removed the need for God. He and his colleagues would argue that science shows that miracles are impossible. Everything is governed by cause and effect, these people would say. If it can't be measured, it can't be real. That's a circular argument, isn't it? Science works entirely on what can be measured. We can't measure the supernatural, therefore it can't exist. But what does that prove? What does that prove? Only that science is limited to a certain part of reality. Beyond that, it becomes a statement of faith on the part of the scientist and Christian alike. We want to argue from the opposite point of view. If there is a God who created the world out of nothing, then there's nothing illogical about the possibility of miracles. So let's talk about the battle of science versus Christianity. People like Dawkins seem to want to revive the battles of the 19th century of Christianity versus evolution. Dawkins suggests it's impossible to be an intelligent scientist and believe in God. Well, I can think of some pretty intelligent scientists who do believe in God. And of those who don't believe, I imagine most would have come to the point of disbelief long before they became scientists. One of the failings of natural science is in its effort to explain the immeasurable parts of human experience: love, generosity, conscience, the innate moral compass. I heard Richard Dawkins on the radio or TV trying to explain that love has to do with the imperative of the survival of the species. It's just evolution making our hormones do their thing in order to perpetuate life. Now, what he didn't explain was how a person can fall in love with someone who's physically unattractive or disabled in some way. If it's just the imperative evolution, why would someone be attracted to another person who's, for example, unable to bear children? That'd go against the entire survival of the species principle, wouldn't it? Similarly, Dawkins seems to have a problem with understanding the idea of sacrificial love, especially love that would give up a life for the sake of another. Years ago, when he appeared on ABC's Q&A program, he described the idea of Jesus giving up his life for the sins of the world as a horrible, depraved notion. And I guess he's quite consistent in coming to that conclusion, because in his worldview, the notion of self-sacrifice goes against the whole principle of natural science. Yet it's why many people do don't they? It's what many people do, don't they? They give up their own rights for the sake of others. Similarly, there are certain moral beliefs that almost all of us hold that just can't be explained by some inbuilt physical mechanism. For example, we see genocide as morally wrong, even if it might be a way of removing an inefficient and weaker racial group from the gene pool. We hate injustice. We cheer when a cheat gets caught. These sorts of beliefs aren't the product of our cultural conditioning. They're innate. They're built in. Still, there are some who would argue that morality arises from a social contract that we all enter into as part of a society. We have certain agreed behavior standards that ensure the society works well. We've worked out that it's in our best interest to follow the rules. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you will lead in the end to the best outcome for you. So we don't steal because the concept of ownership of property is central to our economic well-being. We pay our taxes because if we all pay our taxes, they'll be minimized and the government will be able to do their job well. And so we'll all be happier. I'm sure they've noticed the flaw in that agreement. If everyone else does the right thing and I, on occasion, can get away with ignoring the rules without getting caught, then I'll be even better off. And why shouldn't I? That's the moral question, isn't it? Why is it wrong to break the social contract? Why do we all universally believe that when someone else breaks the social contract, they've done the wrong thing? Is it because there's a God instinct built into us that alerts us whenever we see injustice happening? Whether it's in the form of our conscience accusing us of our own failure or our indignation when we see someone else acting unjustly. Now let's think for a moment about the issue of evolution versus the Bible's account of creation. Do the discoveries of science around the theory of evolution negate the teaching of the Bible? The answer to that question revolves around the question of the nature of the biblical account of creation. Is the account of Genesis 1 and 2 meant to be read as a scientific thesis? God made the world in 6 standard days and then had a day off before getting on with the rest of his work. When we read the Bible, we're reading a library of books written by people over a period of, say, 2,000 years. They write in a variety of genres. There's history, there's poetry, there's parable, there's patriotic fervor, there's lament, there are letters, there's what's called apocalyptic writing, and each one is different. You can't read a patriotic call to arms the same way you read a parable. You can't read a letter the same way you read a lament. And you can't read poetry the same way you read history. So when we read Genesis 1 and examine its structure, what do we find? Well, it reads like a poem or a hymn, doesn't it? It's carefully structured. Each stage of creation corresponds with a later or earlier stage. It isn't trying to give a scientific explanation. It's helping us sing the wonders of God's creation of the world out of nothing. Even when we read Genesis chapter 2, we don't find a scientific explanation of creation the way we would today. We find an account that's mainly theological of how men and women were created equal, of how humanity is superior to the rest of the animal world, of how humans were intended to be the ones to care for God's creation. The fact that the word cloning isn't used when Eve is created is simply because the concept was unknown to people that long ago. Now, what do you think? Could God use evolution to bring about his creative purposes? Of course he could. Could he equally create life out of nothing or make the leap in the genetic development necessary to create the incredible diversity and multiplicity of species? Of course he could. Once you allow the possibility of a God who creates, anything is possible. To deny the possibility is an act of faith, just as much as believing in it. So, what about miracles? One of the great objections to Christian faith has arisen from the belief that science has ruled out anything that doesn't have a material explanation. Again, we call it a material cause. The idea of God doing something that breaks the chain of causality is too much for some people. So we have a problem with our modern worldview, don't we? The Bible speaks repeatedly about God doing things that contravene natural laws. It speaks openly about spiritual and supernatural events and beings. We believe there are parts of the Bible that foretell events that didn't happen until hundreds of years later. So how do we reconcile this with our scientific understanding of the world? Well, I think the place to start is to understand that the God we believe in, is a God who relates to us in a personal way. He speaks to people, sometimes directly, sometimes in a dream or through a vision, sometimes through an angelic messenger. To use an analogy, God acts not just at the wholesale level, but at the retail level as well. He isn't just the moral force of the universe or the master designer. He's also the one who confronts me with my sinfulness, who asks me to work on his behalf, who comes and lives as one of us, dies and rises again so I can be forgiven. If that's the sort of God we're talking about, then wouldn't we expect him to get involved in the creation from time to time in a way that affects the material world? And if he was able to create the universe in the first place, what's to stop him from moving a few atoms here or there to do something miraculous? In the end, it comes down to the question of the God you believe in. For some, their God is science itself. Science has all the answers. Science will bring us salvation if we work on it long enough. Science will even bring us happiness. At least that's the myth that surrounds science and technology. But we believe in a God who first created the world and now sustains it. We believe in a God who intervenes in the world from time to time to bring about his purposes for people. We don't believe in a clockwork universe, but in one where God is in control. And finally, the implication of the various miracles that Jesus did while he was here on earth is that God is a God who desires to heal this broken world. That small collection of miracles of Jesus will be repeated to the nth degree when he brings in the new heaven and earth at the end of time. You know, I have to say, the more I see of the world, the more I'm convinced that it could only have come about by the creative activity of someone like God. It's far too complex. It's far too intricate. It's far too beautiful in its design to have just happened by chance. That's a statement of faith, yes, but it's a statement of faith based on what can be clearly observed in the material world. So what's your thoughts on that? Science and Christianity have always seemed to kind of do this. I don't see that, though. I really see them doing this. They both can explain each other. You know, and yes, it's faith, folks. That's what it comes down to. What do you believe? I mean, I can't say anything else about that. It's so in my mind, it's just it doesn't make sense to have it to not have a God. Just to explain everything as nature. I just don't think that's possible. I just don't think that's possible. And my faith has told me, and my God has told me that that's not possible. That's something different, something more. I'd like to hear what you think about it. You got any ideas on this subject? Feel free to hit that little link going across the bottom of your screen there and come chat with me. I'd love to debate this with you. It's a subject that goes on and on. I mean, we talk about this all the time. There's always an ongoing debate about this, and I think it's important we continue to talk about it and think about it. That's the point. Start thinking about things. I think as a people, we like to be. We're lazy. We want to take other people's ideas and run with it, not knowing, doing any research on the subject ourselves. So people that go to church all the time and are brought up in the church, that's great. I'm glad that you did that. I want people to do that. I want people to have that basis, that foundation for their faith. But listen, everything that you hear in church is not going to be 100% true. Always, people are running the church. God's not up there preaching himself, so mistakes can happen, whether on purpose or not. Misinterpretations can happen. So I invite you to, yes, go to church, listen, but don't forget to use your own head. God gave you a brain for a reason. If he didn't want you to think, he would have just made us drones and typed in what he wanted us to know. But that's not what he's doing. He's like giving us a chance to think about it and make our own decisions. And I think that's what you have to do in this case. You have to do every day. Think about what you're looking at. Think about the pros and the cons of the comparison of the two, or what the proof is showing, what you believe, what God tells you, and then make the decision for yourself. Don't rely on others just to tell you what's right and wrong. Use your head and figure it out. And that's not that's not a diss to for preachers or anybody else or teachers or parents or anybody out there. But that's why God created us the way he did, with minds that can think and decide for themselves. It's frustrating to me that, so many people will come to me with questions like this and don't have any background or any information to back up what they're saying. They just, well, Pastor so-and-so told me that. Okay. Well, what do you think? Well, if Pastor so-and-so said it's true, then it's true. Okay. It reminds me, if somebody told you to go jump off a bridge, would you do it? Some people would, I guess. Think about it first, I think. So, if you don't know, pray about it. If you have questions, pray about it. Ask God. And then take the time to listen to what he says back. Like I said, God comes to us in many different ways. He comes to us through prayers, comes to us through visions, comes to us through dreams. Sometimes somebody else, another person comes to speak the word of God through their own lips to you. Listen, be aware of your surroundings, know what's going on, and listen and observe. That's the only way you can really learn, folks. You have to know what's going on around you. So, I got through that section really, really quick. That's good, though. I mean, because to me, like I say, to me, it doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't believe in a God. I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me. I look around and I see him everywhere. Everywhere. And I can yell cliches of, oh, I see him in the moon and the stars and the sunlight and this. Dude, let me tell you something. That eclipse that we had a couple weeks ago here in Dallas, if that, I can't describe it. People always just see how the moon just went in front of the sun. Well, yeah, but it was an amazing event. It wasn't just the moon went over the sun and caused an eclipse. It was our world went dark, and it went cooler, and it was just, I cannot describe the feeling that I had during that. But the beauty of it was there was a clarity of everything that was so gorgeous that, I mean, some people talk about eclipses as a wonderful thing and a miraculous thing, and they are. But I think that I almost wonder if God has made those to open our eyes a little bit to some things around us. Sometimes the sun gets a little too bright and we don't see things. Maybe God just dimmed it a little bit that day so we could, for those 3 minutes or 3.5 minutes that we had, we could see things a little clearer. I always find at dusk and at dawn, I see things clearer than the rest of the day. Darkness, I don't see clear. And the brightness of the sun, I don't see clear. But right when that dusk and dawn time, everything seems very crisp to me, very clear. I don't know about you, but that's just what I see. And that's when I know that God is at work every day in my life. I mean, why in the world would I take my life, dedicate it to building a church that honestly has not been able to sustain itself yet? It's still very small, but keep pouring my time and my money and my blood, sweat, and tears into it if I didn't believe in a God, if I didn't believe in the God that I know, and if I didn't want to share that God with the rest of the world. Otherwise, I could take my talents and go someplace else and make a lot of money and be on a cruise right now. Honestly. I'm not trying to shoot my own horn, but there's a lot of things that I do that I could get paid for that I do for the church. And I do it willingly, and I will do it again and again and again. Always. We're coming up on the 8th year anniversary. Just kind of throw this out there. We're coming up on our 8th year anniversry of Dallas Universal Life Church. 8 years ago, we started this church. And that to me is amazing. I'm shocked. It's been about a month now. We're a month away from the 8-year anniversary. And it's humbling to me that we're still here. I mean, we made it through being such a small church to begin with, and then making it through things like COVID. I'm amazed that we're still standing, and I'm amazed that we still actually have people that are able to come and be here and worship with us. I don't care if it's one person. I don't care if it's 50 people. We're here, and they know we're here, and they're seeing our stuff online, and that's amazing to me. That If it weren't for the God that I love and know, I know I wouldn't be wasting my time on it. Period. Just me throwing my testimony out there that, I think if you have a grateful heart, I think if you have a heart that is more open to be humble and you see things in that light, looking through those glasses, you see God a lot more. When you kind of let go of your haughtiness, let go of your attitude, let go of your self-centeredness, then I think you see God more in the world. When you are able to give to others of your time and your talents and your abilities and your money freely without expecting something in return, I think you see God more in the world. Science was created by God. Why would he possibly create something that negates his existence? He wouldn't. But he would create something to make us think about it. Think about it. Think. I think God, must be made in his image, makes me think that he really thinks all the time too. He may be all knowledgeable, but I think he's thinking all the time. So many things in this world we don't understand, and we probably never will. We're not God. But what an honor it is to live in the world that he created for us in his image, be in his image, and walk through this world, which, people want to call it a lot of things, the earth, a lot of things. And in my opinion, I call the whole earth Eden. I mean, look what we've got. We've got our sustainability. We've got a beautiful world. We've got sunrise and sunsets and lakes and water and beautiful animals and friendships and love. And it's all right here in this little blue earth that we've got, this little speck out in the universe. We've got all that right here. What could you ask for? What else do you want? What else do you want but love? I mean, you got that. I think you got everything. But all those other things are available here too. We are sustained through this beautiful earth that God has created for us and put us on. And all he asks in return is that we love him. It's not very difficult. When somebody loves you enough to do what God has done for us, I don't think returning the love is that difficult. So, still went way too fast on that. But that's okay. I get excited. I get excited about things like this because I want to share my views with you, and I hope that they come across as clearly as I'm trying to get them. Sometimes they don't, because I just can't put into words what I'm feeling. Sometimes the faith that I have, the faith that people have, is a feeling. It's an internal thing. It's something just deep inside that you just know, and that's hard to explain to people. I just know. I do. I just know. So, okay. So what I want to do here is we'll take a quick break. I've got a volume issue on one of my computers over here that I'm going to take care of. So we'll do that. We'll take a quick break and we'll come right back. And I've got some more to talk about this same subject. It's going to really knock your socks off. So stick with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. I am your host, Bishop Mark Zorn, coming to you live from Dallas, Texas, and Dallas Universal Life Church, as we do every Wednesday evening here at Dallas ULC, Your Path Live with Bishop Mark here at Dallas Universal Life Church, like I just said, every Wednesday evening at 5:30 Central Time, 6:30 Eastern Time. I'm glad you're with us. I'm glad you joined us. Welcome. We're in the middle of the show here talking about some really interesting things about science and God and the ideas of that, and thinking about the existence of God and all those wonderful things. Now, of course, we are calling shows Your Path. This is Your Path. So what it's about. If you want to need some prayer, if you want to pray with us, if you want us to pray with you, that link going across the bottom of your screen is how you do that. Come on live with me. It's why it's called Bishop Mark, Your Path Live, because we want to talk to you. If you want to talk about your Christianity, your faith, your life, things going on, problems, anything at all, hit that link down there. Give us a call. That's what I say. It's just like giving us a call. You come on live with me. We'll talk about it. We'll pray about it. We'll work things out. So that's what we're here for. But while we wait for that, we'll continue to talk about what we were talking about earlier, which is Christianity and God and the existence of God versus science explanation of it. And if you have ideas on that as well, feel free to either hit us up in the chat over here or simply call in on the link there and chat with me. I'd love to hear from you. All right. Again, excuse me. Allergy season is in full swing here in Dallas, Texas, and I'm just having the worst time with it. My voice is a little bit back to this week is better than last week, but I'm still just all clogged up. I'm just crazy. It'll pass soon. Spring will be turning into 110-degree days here pretty soon. And then I'll just complain about that. All right. All right. So don't forget, guys, call in. Let me hear from you. I want to hear from you. Okay. Now, I've seen this business that God has given to everyone to be busy with. He has made everything suitable for its time. Moreover, He has put a sense of past and future into their minds, yet they cannot find out what God has done from the beginning to the end. So writes the author of Ecclesiastes. He says that there's something in the human mind that knows there's more out there than we can grasp. There's more than we know. There's more than the now. He goes on, I know that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken from it. God has done this so that all should stand in awe before Him. There seems to be an innate recognition in the human spirit that there's a God who works in the world, yet He's a God that we're unable to comprehend. It's this unknowable aspect of God that confuses so many people, I think, because we're so tied to the idea that reality has to have a material manifestation. We can't get our head around the idea of an unknowable God. Yet, at the same time, we do all we can to find an explanation for the unexplainable. We ask ourselves, if there's a God, what is He like? Is He a he, or a she, or an it? If you sit down with a group of non-Christians and ask them what they think God is like, you're likely to get a whole range of answers. And in the end, no one will be quite sure they've got it right. Some might even question whether they're wasting their time. Perhaps God doesn't exist at all. Perhaps this searching after God is just an attempt to find someone else to blame for the troubles of this world. Excuse me. Others might argue that science has proved that God doesn't exist. They'd argue that all there is a material world that we can explore and examine. So others will say that unless they hear a rational argument for the existence of God, they couldn't believe in Him anyway. Well, let me ask you, how do you know that God exists? Is what you believe rationally provable? My guess is that it's not. The reason most of us believe is connected with a subjective experience of God, supported by historical records or other observations that may or may not constitute a form of proof. But if that's the case, is it a problem? Is our modern desire for rational proof, in fact, rational? Do we have to have a rational proof before we believe something? I can tell you without a doubt that before we believe something, I'm sorry. Do we have to have a rational proof before we believe something? Do we? Do we? Now, I can tell you without a doubt, my fiance William loves me. Do I have rational proof for that statement? No. No. He may just be a very good actor. It may all be a delusion on my part. He may just be putting up with me for my money. Boy, would he be surprised. Or my collection of frogs that I have. It may just be the lesser of two evils. But does the fact that I can't prove it decrease my level of belief in His love? Of course not. I know He loves me for a host of reasons. The same goes for my belief in God. I can't prove that He exists, but I have a host of reasons for believing that He does. Let me suggest some of those reasons. These aren't proofs. They're just clues for the existence of God, of a being who's beyond us and who's responsible for the creation and sustaining of the universe. So clue number one, here we go. The mysterious bang. When we begin to think about our universe, one of the questions that arises is, why is there something rather than nothing? Most cosmologists are agreed that our universe began some 15 billion years ago, give or take a century or two, with what's been called the Big Bang. It seems that the universe is expanding from its beginning in a single this word always gets me, infinitesimally small point that immediately raises the question, Was there nothing there before? In which case, where did it all come from? The universe can't have created itself. So who did? If the scientists are right and everything is part of a long chain of cause and effect, what was the first cause? What made the Big Bang happen? It could only been something that's outside of nature, supernatural, that is. As I said, this is only a clue. It tells us nothing about the nature of this supernatural being except that he's not part of nature itself. It certainly doesn't equate with the personal God of the Bible, but it is a pointer, a clue to something that looks a lot like the God of the Bible. Clue number 2, the cosmic welcome mat. Now, not only do we understand that the universe began with a bang, but as we examine the world we live in, we discover that there are numerous factors that are necessary for life on Earth to exist. The speed of light, the force of gravity, the relationship between the various nuclear forces within matter, all need to be within a very small range for organic life to exist. In fact, there are 16 major constants calculated by scientists to an incredible accuracy, from the speed of light to the mass of an electron to the charge of an electron, and a whole lot more that I remember from my physics lectures, but I haven't had a clue what they were. If any of these constants were to be even slightly different, our world would never have come into being. I think it's in his book, A Brief History of Time, that Stephen Hawking says that the odds against a universe like ours emerging from the Big Bang are enormous. His conclusion is that there are clearly religious implications. Of course, this too is just a clue. It's easy enough to suggest alternative explanations. Richard Dawkins suggests that there could be trillions of universes, and ours just happens to be the one where everything came together just right. Of course, we have no proof that there's even one other universe, let alone a trillion, but still, it is possible, if you want to believe it. I was watching a show not too long ago called The Mentalist. And it was a TV show. It was a rerun. It was a TV show about a man who's a great observer of human nature and a bit of a showman in the process. He was tossing a coin in front of a couple of his fellow workers, and it was coming up heads every time. They'd look at the coin and couldn't see anything wrong with it, and he'd toss it again, and it'd come up heads again. Now, it is possible that you could get a series of 25 heads, one after the other. The probability of each toss is always 50%, but nobody believes you could actually do it, do they? Well, as it turned out, he was cheating. He was using a double-headed coin and swapping it with a real one when they went to examine it. But you see, even though they couldn't prove that he was cheating, it'd be unreasonable to conclude that he hadn't, wouldn't it? So, if it is technically possible that organic life could have just happened by chance, without a creator, with the incredible diversity and intricacy that we find in it, is it reasonable to live as though that remote chance were true? Are you thinking? Clue number 3, the regularity of nature. How do we know that the sun will rise tomorrow? How do we know that water will boil at 100 degrees Celsius? Every time. Our whole life is based on the assumption that nature behaves consistently. This is the only basis upon which scientists can operate. What they proved yesterday has to be assumed true today. I hate that word, assumed. If they observe certain characteristics in an experimental sample, they assume they can generalize it to all samples of the same thing. That's called inductive reasoning. It's how we learn. Assumptions. My grandfather always told me, never assume anything. It makes an ass out of you and me. So I try not to. But how can we be sure it will always be the case? What evidence do we have that the past will be repeated tomorrow? What grounds do we have for expecting the regularity of nature to persist? It's interesting to think that modern science arose in the form it has because those early scientists believed in an all-powerful God who created and sustains the universe in an orderly and predictable way. Clue number 4, beauty. Why are we able to look at a work of art or listen to a Beethoven symphony or look up at a mountain range and exclaim at their beauty? Is this just a product of our genetic conditioning? That this appreciation of beauty somehow helped our forebears to survive and now it's been passed down to us? I can't see. I can't see that. Can you? We can see beauty there even in the desolation of a sandy landscape like the Sahara Desert. There's nothing there that would have helped you survive as far as I could see, but if that's the basis of genetic if that's the basis of genetic development, yet there was beauty to be enjoyed. But it's more than that. When we experience that moment of joy at seeing something beautiful or hearing a sublime piece of music, we're lifted beyond the material world to something beyond, to the true source of joy and beauty. It's as though there's an innate desire within us to experience that which is beyond us. What C.S. Lewis called a God-shaped whole. The evolutionists would argue that we enjoy beauty because we become hardwired to appreciate it. We love because we're hardwired to do it for the propagation of the species. We believe in God because we're hardwired for belief because it once helped humans survive in a difficult world. But if that's the case, if our belief systems are just the product of evolution, how can we trust any of our beliefs? For that matter, how can the scientist trust her belief in the theory of evolution? But what if our belief in God were true? What if God really does exist? That'll explain all these clues we've just thought about. The Big Bang isn't a problem if there's a God who can create all there is out of nothing. If God is a creator, we'd expect the world to be fine-tuned, wouldn't we? We expect the fine detail we find when we examine the human body, the delicate balance of nature, the consistency of nature. If God has made us, we'd expect to look at the world that he's made and find joy and beauty there, wouldn't we? When a commentator with no religious background listens to a piece of music and describes it as heavenly, we're not surprised, are we? No, a belief in God seems so obvious when you think about it. You may have heard some of Occam's razor. It says, when competing hypotheses are equal in other respects, the simplest answer is likely to be correct. It seems to me that in the absence of a clear rational proof, the accumulation of evidence, as we've seen today, can only lead to our faith in God being reinforced. It can't be proved. But the alternative explanations are far more implausible. So it all comes down to this. Where do you stand? What do you believe? Have you taken the facts and gone through them, each side, each explanation, and learned what they are, thought about it, used the brain that's been given to you, whether by nature or by God, whichever you want to believe, and come up with the most probable or one that makes most sense? Because even God to me is so to speak, untouchable. You can't see him specifically. You can't, he's not there to touch, to feel, in the flesh. Even a God like that, to me, is the best choice out of all of these. Our mind cannot comprehend so many things that are in existence. Think about, okay, there's our universe, right? We know the universe. Our universe that we know is huge. Light years and light years and trillions of light years across, right? What's outside of that universe? I mean, my screen's not even big enough for me to do it. What's outside of that universe? What's outside of that? And what's outside of that? If we try and think about that, this has actually driven men insane, pondering it over and over and over and over. Because this that God gave us, this brain we have, is limited. We can't understand that. We're not meant to. We don't need to. If the Big Bang happened, what happened before it? I describe time as an infinity symbol. I don't know if you know what an infinity symbol is, like a figure 8 sideways. Okay. And it's an interesting notion because you can see on the figure 8, when you go across it crosses in the middle every time as it goes through, right? So that's how I can equate time in my head, that it's an endless cycle there. So there's no beginning and no ending. It's just infinite. And the interesting thing is that it crosses every once in a while. So you have time crossing in the middle of this figure 8 sometimes. And I think that's when we have some really interesting times. These are all just theories on my part, thoughts that I've thought in my head, things that I've gone through and tried to discern for myself and decide what I believe. What do I believe? I believe in a God who created this world. I believe in a God who always has been and always will be. I believe in a God who gave us a beautiful gift, not only of life, but of a way to sustain it here on this world. I believe in a God who sent his son so that we could be saved, so we could live on because we had sinned. I believe in a God that knows what's best for us. I believe in a God that speaks to us every day. We just have to listen. I believe in a God who is all-knowing, all-loving, all-forgiving. I believe in a God who will punish when necessary, as any parent would. But I believe in a God who, as any parent would also forgive, unconditionally loving, and forgive as often as it needed to be. We screw up. We do. Human beings screw up. We're not perfect. God knows that. But if we're trying, I believe in a God who will always have open arms for us, always welcome us home, and always be there to comfort us. I believe in a God who never leaves you alone. Whenever you're in this world, you're not alone. I'm sorry, but you're not. And some of those times when times are darkest are when he's with us the most. We should really be looking for him. And we unfortunately wonder where he is at that point. Well, he's there. I can't explain the miracles that I have seen on this earth, scientifically or any other way. I can't explain the joy I feel when I hear a baby laugh, or when I see a couple in love, or thunderstorms are amazing to me. Why does a thunderstorm give me a good feeling, an amazing feeling? Because I just think it's a beautiful part of creation that God has created. Another thing that's just amazing to me. Nature in and of itself is just amazing. I mean, everything in nature is just, there's so much to see and do and to understand, and all these different creatures and these different things about the world, and weather patterns and earthquakes and volcanoes and tsunamis and tornadoes. And it's amazing. All these things he's put together here. Bishop Mark, you're talking about tragedies. Sometimes that does bring about heartache and tragedy in our lives, and that's going to happen. But think about just the pure amazement at these things that are created. Not every tornado kills or destroys something. I mean, it may go through some farmland, but the actual, if you just kind of look at the beauty of the nature there, it's gorgeous. It's amazing what he's created. Lightning is an amazing display that helps fertilize our ground. So it has its good qualities there. Rain, that water that can come back up out of the ground and go up into the air and then reconstitute and come back down and fertilize again and nourish us again. Oceans filled with creatures we don't even know of all of them yet. Folks, I mean, I can go on and on and on and on and on. And let's talk about just our world. Let's talk about outside our world. These other places that we've seen, just in our own universe, in our own solar system. How can you not be amazed at these things? I mean, I think we become complacent because we are used to it. We've been told it all our lives that this is what it is, and it's out there, and there it is. But if you really just take the time and think about what's out there, what we're looking at, what we're seeing, it's one of those things, again, where I stand amazed. My jaw is just... God loved us so much that he gave us all of this. Everything. All that we are. All that's around us. All that we understand and don't understand. And the ability to think about those things and enjoy them. And share them. So God, to me, may not be the God that you have in your mind. But that's okay. God is different for all of us. It's not going to be the same. It wouldn't make sense. He didn't make us all the same. So why would he be the same for everybody else? He's going to have different traits, maybe. May sound differently to you. May come to you in a different way. But I'll tell you this. One thing you can't say about God for all of us is that he loves us. Period. Unconditionally. Without fail. He loves us. And he gives us that love. And if we accept it, then we are in turn to love others the same way. I think that's what it comes down to, folks. That's what life is all about. I often make a joke that, the hippies of the 70s had it right. Talking about love, peace. I still believe in that. I still believe that if we all can love the way that Jesus loved us, this world becomes perfect. We become an amazing people that does for each other without wanting in return. Never has a need go unmet because of that. So this one gets to me. Talking about this really it's a huge subject for me, and it almost drains me to talk about it because it's so much that I just really want to get it out there and convey it to you how amazing the God that I know is. How amazing it is to feel him working in my life every day. From coming from the background that I have, which I'm grateful for. It wasn't easy, wasn't always good, wasn't always Christian, wasn't always unselfish. But my past is what has made me into what I am today. Because of my past, I'm able to relate and minister to and understand a lot of different types of people in this world, which helps me in my ministry. I'm grateful for that. I hate that I had to go through some of the things I did, and I hate some of the things I did in the past. I do. I hate that. But I'm grateful for them because of what they can do for me now and what the person they maybe have made me now. And that overrides everything. I'm able to use that experience, those experiences I've had in my life now for the good, for the greater good, for the good of God. To teach about God, to teach about how he changed my life and how he can change yours. I'm no saint by any means. Period. And I think anybody that is a saint, that's fantastic. God bless you. But you can't really relate to me very well because I'm not one. But if you're not a saint, I can probably relate to you a little better. That's important to me because there are so many people in this world that go unministered because some of these Christian churches don't feel that they belong there, or they exclude them for whatever reason it is. They do something that's non-Christian, unchristian. They turn them away. Funny, I never heard Jesus turn anybody away for any reason. Did you? So that's it. God and science and the universe and the wonderful things all around us and nature and beauty, and yes, it is what you make of it, I guess. It is what you believe. I hope that my understanding of it, my beliefs have helped you a little bit, maybe to discern your own beliefs. Again, I encourage you to think. Use that brain that God gave you, or use the brain that you have if you don't believe in God if at this point. Think. But think in a way that is informed. Teach, get out there and do the research. If you really want to know these things, do the research and learn it. And then you write down if you have to. Write it all, and just keep it in your head if you have to. But if you have to write it down, these the pros and cons or the differences or what is this, all this proofs and non-proofs. And then decide for yourself. Use the brain. Use it here. It's a strong, amazing piece of equipment we have up there. Just use it. And I think in the end, anybody that's anybody, you can come to your own conclusion. I'm not going to try and tell you that you can't, but I don't, in my opinion, I don't see how you could come up with any other conclusion that there's a beautiful, loving God out there who created you and created all of these things around you and is sustaining it every day. I'd love to hear your argument against that. So, okay, folks, today we talked about, all those wonderful things I just said. I hope some of it sinks in. I'm here every Wednesday at 5:30 Central, 6:30 Eastern Time for Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. We are a call-in show. We pray for people. We pray with people. We talk to you. We just, whatever you'd like to do, it's your path. So please, if you didn't call in today and you were thinking about it, I'll be back next week. Call in. Or you can also please come and see our church on Sundays. Come worship with us either here live in person in Dallas, or you could go to DallasULC.online.church. And at 3 p.m. Central Time, we have church every Sunday. Come join us either online or here. We'd love to have you. And, it's always great to have some new faces and some new ideas coming in. I think that's the way that things keep going and keep evolving is seeing things in a different light sometimes. And sometimes that's what it takes. So for today, we're going to call it a day here in just a moment. And I want to thank you again for being here tonight. It's such an honor to be here every Wednesday with you. I enjoy it immensely. I do want to have some more phone calls coming in, and we're working on that. We're trying to get some people the awareness out there. But tell your friends about us. Tell your friends about who we are and what we've got going on here. I guarantee somebody out there would love to call in and talk about something or even debate something with me. I think that's always fun. I love debating. So until next week, folks, I hope you have a great week. Come and see us next Sunday at 3 p.m. And until then, good night.
Thank you for watching Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. Please join us next Wednesday at 6:30, 5:30 Eastern Time right here for another episode of Your Path Live with Bishop Mark. God bless you and have a great week.